Being aware of your nonverbal behavior is very important to quality customer service. Customers will perceive your personality, attitude, and your willingness to help based on your nonverbal cues. Today, we'll talk about body language, verbal cues, appearance and grooming, spatial cues, environmental, and miscellaneous. Body language is very important to the way you're communicating. For example, eye contact is generally seen as a way to determine whether someone is being truthful or not. In most Western cultures, the typical time that's comfortable for holding eye contact is about 5 to 10 seconds. This can change drastically from culture to culture, so it's always important to research before going somewhere. If length or frequency is different than what's expected, people might think you're being rude or offensive. Facial expressions are also a good indicator of feeling. You can show excitement, happiness, sadness, boredom, frustration, disappointment, and so many other emotions. When working with customers, it's helpful to make sure you're using positive facial expressions like smiling. This can help maintain a positive relationship. Even by looking at these little animations, it's clear what they're feeling. The guy on the left is scared, the one in the middle, he's surprised, and the one on the right is sad. You also want to be aware of your posture, whether you're being very rigid or relaxed or slouched, awkward, or defensive, as your posture can send a variety of messages. Nodding of your head can tell whether you're listening to the speaker or agreeing with them or disagreeing. And oftentimes with nodding the head, people give verbal cues as well, such as or yeah, I see, to signal that they understand and are listening. Gestures can also play a role as you're moving your arms about, showing enthusiasm, or trying to accentuate a certain point. This can help customers to follow what you're talking about. Now we'll move on to vocal cues. A good example of pitch is at the end of a sentence, if you're asking a question, there's usually an inflection in your voice. Or in a sentence where there would normally be a comma in written communication, there'd be a pause in your spoken communication. You also want to be aware of your volume, especially when dealing with sensitive information, to keep the customer's privacy. Or if they're hard of hearing, make sure that you're speaking loud enough so they can hear. You want to make sure that your rate of speech is about average. If it's too fast or too slow, it can be distracting for the customer. And also voice quality, whether it's coming out in a positive tone. Sometimes it can help just by smiling while you're talking, if you're over the phone or in person, and then it comes out a little more kind. Voice quality can also come out sounding harshly or anger, so you want to make sure that the way it's perceived is with a kind tone. You also want to articulate your words well, have pauses when necessary, and allow for silence when you're waiting for the customer to respond. Lastly, you want to be aware of semantics and your choice of words so that you're using professional language and language that is appropriate for the type of products you're selling. Next, we'll move on to appearance and grooming. The way you present yourself can send a message of professionalism or indifference. If you are just beginning in a workplace, it can be helpful to talk with your supervisor to ask about a dress code, and also just be aware of how other people are dressing and what the normal culture is in that business. Good hygiene is also very important when dealing with customers. You want to wash regularly, comb your hair, bathe, brush your teeth, wash your hands, make sure that you smell okay. Otherwise, customers might avoid you. A lot of companies also have perfume policies or cologne policies, so you want to make sure that you're not wearing too strong of a scent. You want to make sure that you're dressed appropriately for the job. This doesn't mean that your clothes have to be expensive or a certain brand. It just means that they're clean and look nice for the profession that you're in and adhere to any policies the company has. As far as spatial cues go, this can differ from country to country, but here's a general guideline as far as Western spatial cues. The first is intimate distance, which is 0 to 18 inches and is generally just for family or intimate relationships, as this small of a distance will generally make people feel very uncomfortable, especially customers. Personal distance is 18 inches to 4 feet, and this is usually used for close friends or business colleagues. Then there's social and work distance, which is 4 to 12 feet, and this is the general distance for talking face-to-face with customers or for casual business events or transactions. And public distance is 12 feet or more, and is generally when you don't know somebody and you're not conversing. Environmental cues. So if you have a desk at work, I want you to take a look at it and consider what sort of message it sends. When dealing with customers, this is often one of the first things they see. If your desk is tidy, if you have maybe a pen and a notepad out to take notes on what they're discussing, you might have some coffee or photos of family, or you might have a lot of junk everywhere and it's super messy and disorganized looking. And these different types of styles can send a message to your customer. So just a note to be aware of that. And lastly, we have some miscellaneous cues. For example, personal habits. Whether you have a tendency to touch a customer or use pet phrases very frequently, such as cool, awesome. There are a lot of phrases that people will use repetitively, and it can be distracting. Also, make sure you're not talking endlessly without letting the customer have time to speak. And keep the conversation professional and don't get into personal problems or complain about your job or coworkers or other customers. For time allocation and attention, make sure that you're giving the customer the attention they need to solve their issue or to help with their transaction. And be aware if the company has time allocations for dealing with customers, and consider ways that you can make your process more efficient, yet have fantastic customer service. And realize that some transactions are going to take longer than others, and be flexible. Make sure you have good follow through. If you tell a customer you're going to do something, make sure you do. And also have proper etiquette and manners, saying please, thank you, shaking hands. And also color can be used to set a certain feel, as colors are often tied to emotional messages. So if you decorate your office and have a lot of blues, it can be calming. Whereas if you have a lot of yellows, it can be more exciting. So just something to be aware of and kind of fun to look into. I hope this session has made you more aware of the nonverbal cues. And thank you for watching. Have a great day.
created using Powtoon.